time to get started on this week's spooky tale. The Campbell Street House. A house that was both a happy family, happy childhood, yet wildly haunted home. We'll revisit stories associated with this home throughout the season. I'm your host, Regina Helton. Welcome to History and Mysteries. Campbell Street, at one time, was a street lined with historic homes and was an active, bustling street filled with children, laughing, backyard cookouts, and many happy memories. In between the happy times, there were dark times and events. Events that just didn't have an explanation. Moments that were odd, scary, and at times, frightening. Like I said, we could talk a bunch about this house, and we will. This story is going to set the stage for all the stories to come. So for now, we're going to start off with the room known as the fabric room. My grandma, as I've told you before, her name was Granny, was a strong woman who grew up very poor but wealthy in the things that matter. She was strong, funny, faith-filled, and kind. She was the daughter of a coal miner, and she had a great imagination and ability to daydream. I think what she lacked in her childhood, she filled with her ability to be able to just daydream with childlike imagination. When she and her husband, my grandpa, purchased the Campbell Street House, they had no idea what events would turn into stories that would be told for years and years to come. One of her daydreams turned ideas was to own a fabric store, and for a short time, she had a small fabric shop. When the fabric shop closed, she moved all of the fabric into one of the downstairs bedrooms. The room became known as the fabric room. The room was lined floor to ceiling all the way around with fabric rolls. It was a mess, yet a beautiful mess. My grandma used this room as her very messy bedroom, and when I spent the night with her as a little girl, I always slept in this room with her. I can still hear her trying to get me to fall asleep with a bedtime story that always ended with her huffing and puffing down a house, Three Little Pigs style, way too long as I fought sleep. The room didn't give off spooky vibes or anything that would stand out as odd, yet sometimes the room would let you know it had a personality. Or maybe something else in the house wanted you to know it was there. The story goes, one day, long before I was born, my mother, a teenager at the time, wanted to go into the fabric room for something. She walked to the door, and when she tried to open the door wouldn't budge. She called to my grandma for help, thinking maybe the door was swollen from summertime humidity or something was blocking it. The two of them pushed with all their strength on the door, and the door wouldn't budge. Finally, after some pushing, the door started to open just a bit. But every time they got the door open, just the slightest bit, something or someone would push it back closed as hard as possible until it was shut again. Over and over, they tried to open the door, and the door would open, then slam closed again. They stood in disbelief, wondering what was going on. They began to think someone was in the room. Maybe a neighbor child had climbed into the window and was playing a game. It was just odd because this was my mother's bedroom at the time, and she just simply wanted to go into her bedroom. Over and over, they pushed on the door just to get it open a slight bit before the door would slam closed again. It was a game of tug-of-war with an invisible force. Finally, my grandma, maybe frustrated, fearful, or both, yelled out for the force to stop, and she added some prayers to that as well. Suddenly it stopped, and the door just opened as though the entire event had never happened. No one was in the room, and they couldn't explain what had taken place. They just knew that suddenly all resistance against the door had stopped. My grandma definitely wasn't someone to give credit to a ghost or a bad spirit. When she spoke of this story, she simply said that something had happened and she didn't know what it was. But all she knew is when she told it to stop, it listened. If you enjoyed this episode, there are tons of ways that you can stay involved with the podcast. You can follow along on Spotify, Instagram at History and Mysteries, or the website historyandmysteries.com. And please tell everyone you know, anyone who enjoys mysterious events, spooky history, unexplained events, or paranormal encounters. And if you have a scary story that you'd like to submit, you can do that through the website at historyandmysteries.com. And if you would like to support this podcast through the fan club, you can also check that out on the website as well. Thanks!